All right, everybody. We're here just like we said we would be with the qualitative study on the impact of endometriosis on the male partners, a study that was published back in June of 2017. This study was combined with about 22 couples that were put into basically a unit of analysis for the couple of themselves. And it's definitely been the topic of discussion I've seen lately within the endometriosis community, and I felt like we should take a little stab at it.
This study showed in a small consensus how endo affected many life domains, including sex, intimacy, planning for children, and working household and male partners, and the impact on their feelings and emotional responses like helplessness, frustration, worry, and anger. It claims to show how the absence of professional and societal recognition of the impact of male partners and lack of overall support for the male partner is the problem of marginalized male support with endo care.
Multiple points in this study set it up for immediate gender bias, including the title alone. Yes, the impact of endo should be investigated beyond the sufferer, but pushing societal standards within these studies can be a cause for concern with the judgments. This study notated multiple times how it was a couple-based study and how the couples were included as one unit of analysis, yet focused solely on the male responses. Could this study have been more focused on the outcome of endo affecting relationships in general? Absolutely. They had the data to correlate and even keep the attention to overall knowledge of the disease-causing issues for both partners, not just the male. It was notated multiple times that women were more affected and that societal standards were influential on the males and their responses.
We as a nonprofit say that the lack of proper recognition about the disease in general results in a marginalized status for the entire endo community. This includes sufferers themselves and those close to them like partners and family. The emotional turmoil healthcare still allows to take place sure has an effect beyond the 200 million suffering globally and is being considered the biggest healthcare crisis in the world, lacking proper awareness.
As we break into the actual study, there was about 22 couples, units of analysis that were interviewed. They were separated and interviewed separately, and the interviews lasted up to about 110 minutes, about an hour to 110 minutes per interview, and they then compared with a thematic analysis, basically, is how this study was done. Quantitative studies suggest that sexual function was not affected in male partners, whereas in women it clearly was in many ways. This study showed that women described the lack of sex to not only be because of the pain, but other symptoms like fatigue, reduced libido because of the meds, lowered mood overall, stress of infertility, bleeding during or after sex, and the woman feeling genuinely unattractive. Women were more likely than men to report the loss of intimacy, closeness, and affection. More than half of the men notated sex was non-existent or rare, while others stated it had simply reduced in frequency. Societal sexual ethics push sex without moral reasoning into healthy, affirming sex intimacy and what is considered harmful sex, mentally or physically. The men being less likely to report intimacy and closeness show the ideal that sex just is. It is just part of life, part of the relationship. Some men did notate this loss with the majority of women, which shows the ideals of sex being an intimate act of respect and closeness are the other side of the coin. However, the lack of discussions beyond sex showed that couples failed to seek other avenues of intimacy and closeness. Most men were aware of the pain experienced by their partner, which they admitted deterred them from asking. Along the same lines, two stances developed on the lack of sex becoming a problem. Some saying it did cause tension and arguments, and others saying they accepted the situation because they felt unreasonable or selfish of them to not do so, further proving other avenues of affection had not been discovered within majority of the couples. So, breaking down the first life domain, sex and intimacy, can you tell us about how you personally felt endometriosis has affected those aspects of your life ever since we started dating in 2016. Explain your change of character and changes that you might have seen me also go through along the lines of sexual and intimacy.
I guess it's been kind of like up and down. At first, we had lots of sex. And then as the disease got worse, obviously, that became less and less. But it really, I'd say it took a toll on our sex life.
Do you think that
It still does in some ways, but it's
caused
something that
issues?
took me a while to get over. Yeah, for sure. But I've got over it. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, it's just something that you gotta accept pretty much, without any ill will, because it's not like it's anything that anybody can control. So, but it took a while to get there, to get to that understanding, I guess.
Do you think that endometriosis was one of the causes of like our sexual frustration arguments and stuff? Do you think that was the main cause, or do you think it was just the lack of just not wanting? What do you think it felt like? Like, did you feel like it was because of my endometriosis at first, or did you just think it was just because I didn't want to do it?
At some points, I thought it was maybe just like excuses, and then I'd be like real like subconscious about it, I guess you could say. But again, it was just something that I had to get over. The longer we were together, the worse it got, and it continues to get worse. But no, it's been a learning experience for sure. Being able to develop like the patience and understanding, and I mean, it's not like it's anyone's fault. So during the times where you weren't really sexually active with me, I kind of just had to push through and get over it. Because I mean, what are you gonna do? I get, irritable sometimes because of it, but it's not like it was anyone's fault. But I mean, I understand now, and I've developed a more in-depth understanding, I guess, with the disease in itself and how it affects your body. I mean, up to an emotional level, I guess you could say. So,
Cool.
did that answer everything?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Did you notice like any drastic changes, like just from when you first got together with me? As you
Yeah, of
progressed?
course. I mean, you got
It
more
just got-
sickly
how it
looking.
just got
You
worse.
just got, I noticed you had more stuff you were talking about that was bothering you.
Within the
Um,
sex and intimacy, it was just
the painfulness, and like
Yeah.
it would make me like not want to proceed, obviously, because I only, like intimacy to me is like both parties got to be enjoying it. So
Did you ever like reach out to like anybody outside of us to like talk about your frustrations?
I just mentioned to people at work forever ago, but back when it was really bad, before any of your major surgeries, I'd say, I said something along the lines of like, I only have sex with my wife like this much. And then like all the guys were super shocked that it was that much, because I guess they get it less. I don't know.
I've had kind of like a high libido in general, but definitely, in my opinion, as the disease progressed, I have lost a lot of just wanting to and genuinely enjoying it as well, which sucks because it was something that I did enjoy and something that I really did enjoy when me and him first got together. So it did take an impact for sure on our relationship, in my opinion. A smaller segment showed actual or anticipated fertility was affected and an issue for most couples. The emotional impact varied, but few men expressed the same levels of anxiety compared to their female partner. Couples who went through medical fertility treatments that failed, there was an increase in emotional impact with these men. some even saying the process was traumatizing and a painful element to process. It is clear that the impact of the woman is moreover, but those moments of family building are communal. So fertility being the second life domain this study touches on, would you say you had any emotions during our first pregnancy on into my diagnosis with how like traumatizing giving birth was? Did you have any like freak outs of fertility moments?
I mean, the first pregnancy, I was worried about you more so because the whole like little hiccup during labor.
Just the labor aspect.
But I didn't know. I guess I didn't see it as
a fertility issue.
Yeah, all kind of just a blur. You know what I mean? It's hard for me to remember all of it.
So witnessing, like for instance, the birth of Felix, our first son, before I had my official diagnosis, was that like, how did that feel for you? Did you feel like we might not have been able to have any kids after we had him?
Yeah, I wasn't sure. I mean, I felt like he could very well be the only
just because of how the birth
one we
went.
have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But just because of how it all went, it was pretty scary to even think about having another after that.
After that, yeah, for sure. So do you
but
think?
I'm glad we did.
So do you think, like with the second pregnancy, you were as emotional as I was with the second one?
No, I was just very stoked that I was having a little girl. So
for reference, my second pregnancy, I was bleeding rectally basically the entire time. Right before that, we were getting ready to plan to have a hemorrhoidectomy surgery, and then we discovered I was pregnant, and I had to go through.
Not saying that wasn't concerning.
Yeah, no, totally.
But I don't know. My experience from it was just good because
you were more excited, and I was definitely going through it, and you were just kind of there. I understand his worry though, because I had to go through IV fluids basically every week, and I was throwing up every morning and bleeding, and I became anemic, and it was scary for me. So I definitely can imagine being on the other side of the fence as well, not even going through it.
So that was concern. All that was definitely concerning, but I mean, the majority of what I felt during the process was
joy.
Major joy.
So for me, I just felt more emotional though, even knowing we were having a girl, something that I definitely wanted and everything. I was just more angry and tired of my body to even enjoy that second and my last pregnancy. So I just was wondering how emotional it was for him compared to me, but I definitely think it was more of a whirlwind for me. With our first pregnancy, the pregnancy itself actually wasn't too bad. I was sick here and there up until contractions started, and it became very traumatizing. During both labor situations with first and second pregnancy, my contractions were lasting like 30 to 45 minutes long, and I was getting like 5-minute breaks in between. So neither one of the experiences were anything normal. So I was beyond red, like done. And although I wanted more kids, we did maybe want one more, but I just couldn't do it anymore. I could not go through that anymore. So once I got diagnosed with Endo, did you have any fertility concerns at that point, or no?
No, because I didn't really know anything about Endo, to be quite honest. So I didn't know what it even was, really.
You're just kind of like, all right.
Yeah.
The impact of Endo on men's working lives was less significant than of women's lives, but it was noted the condition caused partners to either lose pay to accompany their partner to appointments, doing extra tasks, and even taking lesser paying jobs just to be closer to home. Some even became self-employed to be at home to aid in caretaking. An equal outcome on the impact Endo had on the household incomes were mainly due to loss of reduction of the female partner's income, some even mentioning the accidental shift into traditional societal roles of males being the breadwinner and the female becoming the dependent. Tying up the third affected life domain, Can you talk about the working and financial impact Endo has brought into our family from your perspective?
Well, I mean, it's been a substantial amount, to say the least. So, the financial burdens that come with the disease are just outstanding, and mostly because it takes so long to diagnose. I mean, half these doctors don't even know what they're looking at, and it takes, a specialist for the most part to actually identify it and start the process to treat it, because it's not curable. But no, it's been quite severe. I mean, just like the inability to maintain a typical work week for you because of the disease cause stress in itself, let alone if you're like managers or your other staff or employees didn't understand necessarily what the disease was and didn't see it as anything very serious. So that was probably pretty rough for you to experience emotionally, but
From your perspective, you
Yeah.
again?
yeah, I mean, to my understanding, my perception of it, I'd say it was rough for you. And then obviously it was rough for all of us on the financial end of things with only one income. Being able to sustain on one income these days is virtually impossible. Unless you're making like, $150,000 a year. But off like $70,000 a year, it's like hardly affordable, I'd say. So the impact financially has been quite substantial.
Do you think it affected your work in general, minus just the financial aspect of it?
It made me strive to do the best I could to progress in my career as fast as I possibly could for the financial aspect. And it's worked so far, thankfully. I mean, but still, it's like, the medical bills will keep piling up regardless. And I don't know. I don't see it getting better with the state of the world, so.
Hopefully, I just slowly get better after all of these.
I hope so. I hope after this you heal up nicely and you can experience normal, healthy.
We start catching back up on things.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely. It definitely had a huge impact. Still kind of does in some ways.
Well, because it's
The
an
mounting
never-ending
medical
journey,
debt is just unfathomable.
and it continues to build. You think you're done, and then I just keep getting hit with another train.
Yeah, man.
Going into the next aspects, the study states that Endo changed the roles that men occupied in relation to the nature and extent of support they provided within the relationship. Let me say that again. Endo changed the roles that men occupied in relation to the nature and extent of support they provided within the relationship. Genuinely, a relationship or marriage acknowledges the possibility of in sickness or in health. Apparently, to some of the men, providing support in relation to health care and getting treatment, helping with self-management, and after-surgery care were considered beyond societal roles for these men. This also included taking on everyday tasks, taking care of the children, and being emotionally there, caring, and understanding, and also available to communicate feelings. It all seemed to fall into the study's main components of going beyond societal standards by changing the roles they occupied. Breaking it down further, for the majority, it seemed that a little compassion, communication, and genuine support was more than they expected to take on as a male partner. Would you say that roles implemented in society influenced your original ideal on a relationship, even before you met me? Just being raised up within society.
I mean, I learned different family structures of different types of relationships within all my, friends, families, and it was wide-ranging in the variety that there was. to experience. So, I mean,
So
I think I had my own concept of what I thought a relationship should be compared to what society pushed on to me.
kind of like a mixture of everything along with what
Yeah.
you wanted, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So yeah, I guess it had somewhat of an influence. I'd say a positive one, because the majority that I was around, I would say had a pretty solid relationship.
Cool. So, do you think that having a partner with Endo influenced the idea that you had to do more than if you were with someone who did not have Endo?
Yeah, I mean, just anyone having any type of disease, typically, the partner would have to be more understanding and help in the ways that they need to help. Maybe just do a little more here and there than they normally would.
Do you think that the normally would aspect would be just because that's what society has like implemented? Like, you only do this much and your other partner does this much?
I don't think so. I've always, I grew up around the understanding that everything should be evenly, conquered as a team.
And taking up for what the other person
So,
lacks shouldn't be a
when I say
problem.
do more than average, I mean that with the most highest moral standing ever.
Gotcha. Not in like a I have to do more.
Yeah,
Like,
no.
I do have to do more, and that's okay. Yeah, gotcha. Numerous studies show that partners can go through the stages of grief with those suffering from cancer or other chronic ailments. The same is proven with this study as overall helplessness, frustration, worry, and anger prevailed with acceptance in some. Helplessness from the inability to alleviate symptoms, frustration from not being able to help and not being able to do the things they would like to as a couple, and worry about their partner's well-being, anxiety with surgeries, and anger directed largely at the health care received by partners. Frustration tied into medical management and dissatisfaction of the quality and timeliness of a diagnosis. Men seemed, moreover than women, to have the idea that endo management was just finding and fixing it, then consequently getting emotional over failed fixes. They also struggled to cope with the impact endo had on their female partners' emotions. Some couples experiencing overwhelming dynamics. Some mentioning that every aspect of their day-to-day life was influenced simply from the disease, having almost no life at all. Few of the men did say that if they felt any emotion they experienced was supposed to be less than their partner's because they felt insignificant compared to the pain that she was feeling. They then dismissed their own feelings. Many noted this was the first time that they had been asked on how they felt during the study. They admitted to the societal ideal of male brave face to protect, shield, and stay strong. The fact many stated they felt almost selfish to seek help themselves while their partner was in agony prevented the lack of open communication to their partner or anyone else in their life. When a few mentioned that they did seek outside support, the lack of sufficient awareness and understanding about the disease in general was no help with others realizing the true depths of the disease. While many said the focus should be on their female partner, many did ask, "What about me?" A clear emotional toll is being had on both angles in these relationships. But could you explain your own journey in discovering your partner having endometriosis and the emotions and steps you went to accept it in your own way?
I mean, it's kind of just something that I had to get over. Watching her transition through all the different phases of this disease was, I guess you could say it was an emotional thing to have to experience, not from just her side, but from my side, just from the typical stresses of like the financial aspects and having to do more all the time when you're already tired is like, but I mean, eventually you get used to it, and it's not like you can be mad at, her or anybody in particular, because it's no one's fault that she has this disease. I'd say the biggest things were just the frustrations from not getting the right help for the longest amount of time. That was the biggest turmoil of, I think, the whole thing.
For you?
Well, yeah, it was stressful, not knowing what to do, or having any answers, really, from professionals. So,
The study also shined light on some positive impacts endometriosis brought on to the couples. Men mentioned developing an approach to living with someone with this condition enabled them to become a more sympathetic person and a better partner while being able to listen and offer support. Some even saying it would help them come closer and had strengthened the relationship. Would you say that Endo had brought any good or positive impacts to our relationship?
I think it brought a lot of patience for everybody.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean that's a pretty big positive, and then just a better understanding of where we need to go to get the proper help was a big one. So
To continue.
big positive. So, and then the advocacy, of course, knowing enough about the disease, you can actually start to spread the good information, the resourceful information. And not just the societal concept that this is all just a sexual reproductive disease.
Right.
So,
Which this study was done based in reproductive studies and sciences. So the main ideal within the sex and intimacy is why people were in an uproar, but it was a reproductive based study, so I can understand why that was kind of like a huge conversation within the data itself. But it did, as we went through, touch on multiple other avenues.
this study does show the impact Endo has on males with multiple life domains and highlights men's emotions and the needs for the endometriosis awareness. However, the study is an example of why updated research still needs to happen to help the endometriosis community.
Partners of all should be researched, including partners of men with endometriosis and trans individuals. So many other avenues should be included now in 2023 onward with endo studies and research. Since this study in 2017, we have discovered so much more on the disease. Focusing on all of these facts, including the genuine effects endo has on the lives of those around us, can be beneficial to show how serious this disease is and why med school teachings need to be reformed. Yes, the focuses should be more on those with the disease, but when we want inclusiveness, we have to be willing to accept it as well.
So we say, please bring more studies and conversations on how endo affects couples, families, and even careers. Getting the big picture done and worded correctly can achieve a lot. That can only be done by sharing our experiences to be looked at for changes. Significant others, mothers, fathers, siblings, and friends.
On to medical professionals and researchers. Our voices can make a difference. If you'd like to begin using your voice to make a difference, please consider a few of the options we're involved in. First, we have Project 514415, which is an art project collecting stories from all angles of endometriosis life that helps share the perspectives in a unique ways. These are open submissions, and all of them will be accepted and placed into a coffee table book to help in shining the light on these struggles. More information can be found at project514415.com. And again, anybody who is in the life of the endo sufferer as well as the endo sufferer can submit. We also have an endo diary entry submission where endo patients can send in their entire diagnosis journey to be included in a book of testimonials that will be used in an upcoming U.S. class action investigation in endometriosis care. We are also seeking signatures to help grow our petition for the Department of Justice investigation. Currently at 2.3K and growing, we are creating history and tackling one of the biggest health crises of the 21st century. Reach out to me to be a part of it with us. Thanks for joining us, and we hope that we gave a little bit of a different perspective on the ideal of this quantitative study on the impact of endometriosis on male partners. But also kind of shed more light into the aspects of why we need to focus on more than just the male partners, but other individuals within our lives, including the endo sufferer. And when we do these studies, they should definitely be notated. For instance, like I said, this study definitely could have been more on the relationship basis and couple basis, but they definitely flipped it to be more on the male focus. But this definitely had more of a influential ideal, in my opinion, for couples and relationships. Wouldn't you think so?
Yeah.
Yeah. It highlighted the male impact for sure, but I think it definitely shined a lot more of the light with the relationship impacts, in my opinion. So tell us what you guys think. Let us know if there's any other studies you'd like some opinions about. I think we're gonna maybe try looking into doing some podcast stuff and doing like hubby wifey chit chats on endometriosis stuff. So we'll see
Yeah.
about it. Thanks again, and
Thank you.